The two major political parties in St. Vincent, the NDP, the ULP. Why the ULP, not the NDP?
You know, I think that the philosophy of the ULP is something that I could identify with. And I think that over the years, the 9 years that the ULP has been in government, that there have been some very important initiatives. You know, and it came out most clearly to me on one occasion when I heard, you know, a business leader, you know, incidentally from a company that is notorious for laying off workers, criticize the budget, the current budget, because, according to him, you know, there was too much provision for safety nets, you know, for individuals who probably are going to suffer worse from the economic recession. You know, I don't think that that is a criticism, you know, to be made. When that criticism is made, you know, that inspires me, and that makes me believe that the government's focus is in the right direction. You look at as well the work that they have done on poverty reduction, you know, in St. Vincent, and the resourcefulness that has been demonstrated. You know, I think that it demonstrates that our focus is, or the government's focus is in the right place. You know, and I hope to contribute to a strengthening of what has been taking place. You look at the way in which we move to great equality, you know, within society, and whether or not it's of opportunity for education, you know, whether or not it's financial equality, you know, or by some other means, you know, and I think that the philosophy of the government is sound, and the way in which they have carried out their work, you know, is equally important.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we'll stick a pin there, and when we come back from the break, we'll continue to talk about ULP's philosophy.
Okay.
All right, stay tuned. My guest today, Luke Browne. Luke, before the break, we were talking about the philosophy of political parties and why you choose the ULP, you know. But continue with that one.
You know, well, the philosophy, I think, of the ULP is made clear by the work that it has been doing. You know, it is a philosophy that is anti-imperialist and anti-capitalist. And, you know, we could bring out or tease out the difference in philosophies as such. If we look at, you know, even the very name of the New Democratic Party, you know, they said that it was NDP because it was supposed to always be new.
Yeah.
You know, there should be a renewal of ideas and the like, and because they like the connotations associated with democratic, and then the connotations associated with party as well, I suppose. Or that's the way in which, you know, a party ends, you know.
Okay.
And, you know, the thing is, if you look at both political parties objectively, you'd see that it's the ULP that has demonstrated a capacity for renewal. You know, I don't think if anyone looks at the recent operation of a party which, you know, says don't touch the Constitution, you know, and who is so fundamentally opposed to change, would be able to see the renewal coming forth. You know, the ULP, on the other hand, you know, there is a distinction between old Labour and new Labour, and that is a spontaneous distinction to show how it has been renewing itself.
Okay.
You look at the preparations for the upcoming general elections, and you see further signs of renewal. Then the NDP also was democratic as well. And when we hear democratic, we think about the Democratic Party in the United States, and we know that the New Democratic Party here doesn't stand for the principles that the Democratic Party in the United States stands for, and the ULP, on the other hand, is closely aligned to that party. You know, so we see that even the naming breaks down in that case. And I want us to consider that the NDP ran one of its political campaigns on the back of IMF praise. You know, IMF came and said that there was much to praise, you know, and little to fault. And, you know, it's not surprising when we assess the operations of the party on some critical fronts. For example, the IMF is often responsible for encouraging third world rulers, so to speak, and, you know, business leaders to desist from establishing national industries. And we see that during the course of the 17 years, some very, very important industries were closed down here, you know, including the sugar industry, and we saw how Diamond Dairy succumbed as well.
But why are they closed?
Well,
was it because of the IMF or because?
Well, when we have the IMF encouraging that approach, you know, and we see those steps being taken, and then the IMF comes and says much to praise, little to fault, you know, I think that the case is clearly made. And, you know,
even the plus on the government that the IMF is saying, hey, there's, you know, much to praise and little to fault. I mean,
I want the people of St. Vincent and the Grenadines to say much to praise, little to fault. I want when a government is able to secure the recognition of the people in that regard, and that is what is wrong, you know, in many instances, because look at the system of honors, it's still based, on the British system. So it still shows that we appeal to some foreign power or authority for legitimacy. And it's the same with our leaders as it is with our writers and thinkers. They believe that we ought to be a recipient rather than a producer, of knowledge. They believe that, there is no credibility to the things we say and the things we do until there's some foreign sanction. And, we need to change that approach if we are to make important strides. And that approach is the very thing that we're trying to fight off, so to speak, from the history that the Caribbean has experienced. And I tell you, when you have an economy like the St. Vincent and the Grenadines economy, and you're saying that you should close national industries, man, when you go and you talk to the people in the different communities, the young men and women who are unemployed, they're saying that they want this kind of work because they see it as critical for us to attain economic self-sufficiency.